recording. All right. So one thing I do want to say is I want to make you all aware of the sensitivity of the subject today. Okay. It's just be aware of what this implies on my end. So if there are brief moments that I hold my poise and I do not respond in a mocking fashion, it's purely diplomatic and political, okay?
Listen, Alex. So I've thought about this a lot as to not put you in a precarious position. So typically what we would do in these segments is list off essentially 5 things, right? This is our hashtag cancel this. 5 things that irritate us about a specific subject. But I'm doing something a bit different and I'm being more diplomatic in this particular approach on this subject because I think it warrants it. Not because I don't want to go hard in the paint. It's because I think it warrants a more sophisticated conversation, which I think will be in good alignment with dialogue between you and us. So I've thought about this a lot. I took 2 really long walks today and I go, do I want to go hard in the paint at this and really fucking disrupt some stuff? Because I'm typically that would be the way my brain goes. I said, or do I really want to have like the most meaningful conversation I can have? And that's kind of what I decided on. So
and you got that, and you got that white flag on your messages, which is important,
dude, multiple times.
Okay. Hey, so I got to run from here because this guy's got to go somewhere, but he wants to say hi.
Who's this guy?
I actually asked him to say hi. What?
Who's this guy?
This guy. You're going to see him now. And I think he'd be an interesting guest if he ever has time. You know,
it's Sinbad.
Is he Spanish?
It's yeah, he is. All right, let me put him on for a second.
Oh, that is awesome. Yes, Robert Caldwell. Sweet. Hey, by the way, I saw you on a plane one time. It was really weird.
We totally did.
So you know what's weird is every once in a while, like I'll get on a plane and I'll see a dude with like a tatuaje hat, and I'm like, I just fucking look at the floor. That shit happens. It doesn't happen a lot, but I mean, it happens often enough. Like every 5th flight, there's like a dude with like a cigar merch shirt or hat on, and then I get on and I'm like,
yeah, you're like, ah, shit.
I like walk through it like this. It's normally a heavy guy. That's like one of those guys. And then the other thing, like if I go on vacation somewhere and I see a cigar shop, like I have like a 6th sense for knowing that there's one. I'll cross the fucking street and like walk down the other side of the street looking the other way just to not fuck up my day.
Now here's the sad reality of when I saw you on a flight, because you were sitting first class, and actually Chris and I were flying to the Dominican, and you were sitting up first class, and you can't miss you because you're a tall dude. And I wasn't an asshole, but when I got to my seat, we were probably 7 rows behind you, and I was like, Robert Caldwell, and you never even fucking turned around. And then I think
I might have not heard you.
You probably didn't, but then literally I took a picture of the back of your head and then tagged it in Instagram, and I was like, that guy right there is Robert Caldwell.
That's awesome.
It made me feel good at the time, but dude, it was good to see you. I know you got a jet, but that's awesome.
Yeah, man. You guys got to have me on your show.
100%. I'd be down for that anytime.
Send me a
literally
message.
anytime.
We'll set it up.
I definitely will. And actually, you know what? You could, if you didn't have an appointment, like we didn't really want to talk to Alex. So, I mean, if you want to hang around for a bit, we can just tell him to jet if you'd like.
I would, man. I'm stuck. So I gotta go. But yeah, send me a message and let's do it for sure.
Absolutely. We definitely will.
Perfect. All right. I'm going to turn you back over to Alex now.
All right, my man. Good seeing you.
Thanks, man.
Good to see you.
Boring guy's on now.
You lucky duck.
Wait. Let me pick things up. I'll go in the car. No. Yeah.
I mean, that was better than Sinbad, but I really wanted to see Sinbad.
Yeah. You know, Sinbad's broke as a joke.
Probably.
Do you know that, Chris?
In my car, turn off the Wi-Fi. Just give me like.
Dude, hey, listen, you're fine. We're gonna keep talking without you.
Like, I got a little.
I love how like You know, I always fuck with my employees on Zoom because they'll be in the middle of having a conversation, Chris, and I'll just go like this.
Thank you, bro.
Or I'll do one of the where your face is like this. You're like,
Yeah.
and they're like, Corey, are you frozen? And I just stand there for like 30 seconds. And they're like, you frozen? I'm like, no, I've been here the whole time.
It's like, Tom, you will not believe.
It's fucking fantastic. Hey, that was a good treat, man. That was a good treat. You know what's kind of funny is like, I admire that guy so much, and I don't really say that often, but I've always said like if there's one person I like could really meet that's been in the cigar industry for a long time, it's just a wealth of knowledge. It's like it'd be Robert Caldwell for sure.
Yeah, and he has such a prestigious name. He sounds like a lord or some type of baron.
Sir Robert.
Sir Robert Caldwell.
And super cool dude as well. So
yeah. I mean, I could tell it was pretty fucking awesome. That was cool. So Alex, I promise you, my man. You know, I said before, I won't make this controversial for you. This is kind of you know what I honestly think this is going to be, Alex, and I hope you can still hear since you're off video. I hope what this can be is a part one of probably a 2-part episode, because I think there's more than enough to discuss. I think there's more than enough topically to really get into here. But what I wanted to do, and again, hopefully Alex can hear us. He's not saying anything. Bark twice if you're in Milwaukee. Nope, definitely not. He probably can hear us, but I don't know if he can speak to us.
That's fine. It's kind of like our normal audience. You know, they really can't talk back, but we can just talk to them.
We can just talk to them. Now, Chris, I wanted to do this, and we'll begin with this. So there's 2 definitions that I really want to go over, and I think this will help kind of curtail the conversation about this. And this is just to expose the episode. The topic of the episode is hashtag cancel this, right? Everything we hate about cigar influencers. Not 5 things, everything. Now, here's how I want to begin the episode. And Alex dropped off, but he'll be back on. Here's how I want to begin the episode.
Okay.
Influencer definitionally is a person or thing that influences another, which is a pretty broad base and somewhat vague definition. But what we're talking about in terms of the cigar industry, we're really talking about more of the social or digital influencer, right? And that is a user who's established credibility in a specific industry, has access to a huge audience, and is able to persuade others based upon their recommendations. So really, from a social perspective, that's topically what we're really going to get into here. And I think there's enough meat on the bone, again, to make this kind of a 2-part effort. I really think we could probably spend hours on this subject. And of course, I am very curious in terms of, and he's coming back on, I'm very curious of Alex's perspective on this as somebody who owns and operates a company. There he is. Are you I-95 in it? What's up, buddy? I was essentially giving you an introduction. I can't hear you, but I can see you. So hopefully you can hear us.
No, not yet, but I was switching Wi-Fi to cellular data. You can't hear me?
No, I can hear you now.
We can kind of hear you now.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Hey, eyes on the road, motherfucker.
I have my eyes on the
road. So Alex, what I was doing was I was just kind of introducing the subjects at hand here. And I told Chris, like, this could really be, this could be an extended conversation. I just went through the definition of what influencer is according to Webster. And then of course the digital and social aspect of what influencing is as it would potentially relate to the cigar industry, which is something that topically I think we can spend a ton of time on. Also, I think it's advantageous for Chris and I to get your perspective on this as well. And it looks like you kind of froze again, or you're doing what Chris does and just magically freezes up. So with that,
I'm just nodding.
Okay. So what I wanted to do was kind of start it off like this, more broad base. So I had this conversation Do you remember that Clubhouse app that everybody was? And I'm pretty sure the fucking owner of like Clubhouse runs like a pedophile ring or something like that, and that's the reason it's no longer. Now, listen, that's a speculation, but that's what I heard. So whether or not I know it's true, I'm not accusing. This is not an accusatory thing. It's just what I heard. But that whole fucking bullshit came and went pretty fast. But anyway, I was on the Clubhouse app and I was part of this extended conversation that centered around what influence is in the cigar industry. And there's a few people, and they'll remain nameless. And it's not because they said anything wrong or damning. It's just for the sake of conversation, depending on what people's beliefs are and where their thoughts lie in terms of what is influential in the cigar industry. I just want to name names. But the conversation was really centered around a couple organizations over in Europe who would use and or task certain folks, influencers, if you will, definitionally, I guess, on like Instagram and social media to broadcast and support and or influence around their products. And then the conversation went kind of deep in terms of like, well, what is the return of that effort? Did you get what you want? Was there sustainability? And it seemed like the answers were a bit mixed. And then there was another particular person who I admire in the industry greatly that said, well, what does it do from a long-term perspective? Like, and what do you have as a brand that has to support that effort? Like, meaning that you could pay someone, right? Someone could pay me, and it's happened. You could pay me money, and because of my following, I can sit there and say, this product's great. Make sure you get your hands on this, and so on and so forth. But it may not be a great product. So I oftentimes think about the sustainability of that effort and what that does from a long-term perspective. And I mean that more based on like cigar manufacturers or brands. And Alex, I do want to take some time to talk about just even what you do with My Cigar Pack and kind of interrelated to some of the competitors that you have out there too. And this is not, I'm saying it right now, not a bash fest or anything like that. It's not that. I want to get an understanding of like really what works and what doesn't, what's meaningful, what's not, what's the progression, where do we see it going? Is there the same level of influence? Like what do you definitionally think influence is? There's a lot to talk about. There's a lot to kind of unpack in this conversation. But really what I wanted to do was kind of center around, and this is the first topic, who in the cigar industry is influential? Because I was thinking about this earlier on my walk, and here's what came to my mind. Brand owners, super influential, right? If we're simply talking about influence, brand owners, you have people who work in publications, you have expert consumers, you have podcasters and other mediums, right? For media, there's a level of influence kind of spun or webbed around all those things. So you have, minus the social aspect of it, or if you are on Instagram and your header says influencer, and it could be defined in whatever way you want to define that. But there are multiple levels of influence in the cigar industry, right? So who influences what? Like, Alex, who do you feel to you is influential in the cigar industry? Like, if you were to say off the top of your head, these are the people, here's the folks, a particular individual I think is very influential in the cigar industry, and why that person? Like, what do they bring to the table in terms of those things?
No, I mean, this is going to sound like BS, but I think honestly the most influential element or component, if you take all that, that nucleus of different, elements of what an like who influences, I would have to say the most influential is the consumer. At the end of the day, it's got to be the consumer. It's got to be that mouth to mouth, that reputable, conversation, that true and authentic. I paid for it and I'm repping it because I like it. Where whoever's untied, whether they were originally poised as an end consumer or not, but whoever organically paid for the product and liked it, or in a negative case disliked it, is the most influential to me. To be honest, if I had the chance to talk with different people, I'm pretty sure I could convince you know, in a hypothetical, obviously you're mentioning like hypothetical scenarios. I believe that I could convince a lot of people that say my cigar pack is a better program within the realm of, you know, some of its competitors. Even though those sub to, dude, I'm being super direct and super honest with, you know, with how I feel the influence goes as far as you know, the effect. I think all of those angles that you pointed out are relevant in the sense that there's a lot of influencing channels, you know.
Right.
I don't know if I answered the question correctly, but I believe the end consumer is the most influential because it's the biggest, it's the largest.
Yeah,
I
don't think there's to me, there's not a correct answer. It's kind of what you said. What are the angles, right? Where does influence derived from? Before you hopped back on, I just kind of quickly went over the definition of influence as Webster would define it, and then social influence as it's defined. Two drastically different things, obviously, definitionally. So I do agree with you in terms of like the element of the consumer, right? Like, and it's kind of one of those things. It's and to the good and to the bad, as you've already said. It's almost like you get your car worked on and you have a great experience. You may tell 5 or 6 people that go and they get their car worked on, and another 5 or 6 people, another 5 or 6 people, all great experiences, and it kind of blossoms and blooms from there. A lot of businesses are growing organically in that manner. So the power of the consumer influence is great, to the good and to the bad. But let's recognize something in the cigar industry alone, which is the element of being paid to influence. I think that's something that everybody knows, doesn't really discuss to a high degree. And one of the things I've noticed is like, and let me put it this way, and then we're going to get on the topic of how it relates from a gender perspective, and I think we have to do that. But right now, just as a whole, overarching, there are people within the social media realm, specifically interrelated to the cigar industry, that may have large followings. I think that is probably the number one. Like, what kind of statistics can you put out from your posts? Like, what's your following? How many likes, how many comments, and then there's the back end stuff in terms of reach and impressions and so on, different shares. And I think all of that is interrelated to somebody who owns and operates a brand, or it could be anything. Like, again, going back to what you do in My Cigar Pack, right? Anything interrelated to cigars where you're selling, producing, you provide a product or a service, you could essentially pay for somebody to help represent your brand. But I'm wondering how effective that is. I've never heard anyone talk about how effective it is, because I don't know that there's brands that love to admit what they're doing tactically and even strategically in terms of those things. Like, I've not had that conversation where someone goes, yeah, my return on investment, trackable return on investment is this from this particular endeavor. Here's my budget. Here's my marketing spend in terms of these things. Here's what I got in return. Like, those are conversations that never occur. But I'm curious. I am curious. I have a heightened sense of curiosity as far as what does that look like? And what is the sustainability of it? Do you come back to that person and do something else? Is there round 2, round 3, round 4? Chris, you have something to say. Go for it.
I think this is a great subject, Corey, and I will try to be as tame as I can be with these answers, but still using my analogies that are incomprehensible. It's kind of like the used car lot that has those fucking wavy, like, fucking balloon things, you know? And it's enough to grab your attention, right? It's enough to grab your attention. But are you going to go to that dumpy used car lot and buy a car that you're not even really interested in buying? Or those guys outside of a Dollar General who are flipping signs? Yeah, sure, it looks flashy. Guy's got some mad skill flipping that little wood board around. And he's got your attention. But are you going to go into that Dollar General and start buying products? It may be enough. It may be enough to get you to pull off to the side of the road, find a nearest parking lot, and walk into the store. But it never guarantees you're ever going to commit to buying. It's just a looker. It's just to grab your attention. That's it.
But are there some people, and this is kind of the path that I want to go down. I think there's an element of the flash, right? No pun intended. There's an element of the flash, and there's an aesthetic, there's an appearance. This person garners a lot of attention. And then I think you have another part of it, and that's a knowledge-based perspective. Like, who knows what? Is the influence derived from knowledge and background and being exposed to this world for a long period of time and through information and education? Or is the influence from flash? And which one is, because in this conversation I had in Clubhouse, someone suggested on there that when they pay for somebody to represent their brand in social posts, that the return is typically pretty good in terms of what they said, although numbers weren't shared. That it ends up being a net positive for them.
So that's more like the guy that's carrying the big wooden cross at the corner of a downtown city street, praising Jesus in the coming apocalypse, and that you must join Christianity so that you may be saved before the apocalypse comes. I get that. That can be very powerful. I get that.
Yeah. So Alex, the other day, one of the things that had come up that I saw, and I'm not going to, again, I'm trying my best not to name names. It would be a competitor of yours. And there was a post that went out, and it was very clear in what the post was, that it was a paid post, that it was a sponsored post, and it was essentially to garner some attention around the product of a My Cigar Pack competitor. Now, this is a competitor of yours that I actually know fairly well. And when I look at the product being delivered to the marketplace, to me personally, it's subpar. So that's where I talk about like sustainability. Maybe it gains some exposure. Maybe it's the Trojan horse, but what does it do from a long-term perspective? Does it do anything? You know, because I kind of look at it and I go, I think about this just with brands, right? You could market the hell out of a cigar, and you could pay for someone to market your cigar for you and push out social posts and so on. But if you're making a shit cigar, the consumer is going to be aware of that very quickly. And so what happens in those cases?
Just part of the market is going to be aware of that. That's the problem.
Yeah.
Just part of the market. There's a really big new coming audience that, can't really know the difference between, apples and oranges, but, it may again sound like BS, but I take pride in being very organic with the growing process. So I wouldn't be the best person to give you a concrete answer on the long-term impact on, a deliverable on a payment, what is the deliverable in this case?
Right.
Loyalty, retention, reputation, brand awareness, but we get that. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
We get that from, with time. And again, I'm not the best suited to do that because we try to really grow organically. In sense of the knowledge base behind these paid medias, let's call it that. It's very I keep saying it's very relative, just because it seems like every day there's a new expert. There's a new source that has read every book. I mean, there's guys out there, and I'm not naming anybody, and I'm not trying to point fingers, but there's guys that are claiming, they're literally getting on videos and they're claiming to be experts. They're saying they know what's going on and they have a certain validity, but these are guys that have never stepped foot on a farm. And that, for example, on my case, that doesn't make me smarter in an objective perspective to what I'm trying to sell, or I'm trying to cater to the product. But if you're trying to be you know, objective to the science itself, to the knowledge, to the real knowledge base in this industry, which is experience, obviously, because every product is completely different. I mean, there's a lot of things that are pretty, you know, unarguable. They're pretty standard. But in most part, there's a lot of relativity is what I'm trying to say. There's use middle lane and turn left. Right, I gotta turn. I'm trying to read the dude. I have no idea where I am right now, because Robert lives super far from me, so I have no idea where I am right now. But I was trying to stay online with the point that there's a lot of relativity in the knowledge that a lot of people have or claim to have. So it's kind of tricky to know what is truly impactful versus what is actually legitimate.
Right.
And creates impact because it's legitimate, not just because it's flashy, going back to Chris's example.
Do you think though, do you have a feeling, knowing what you know, this may not be a question you want to answer, is there a heightened, maybe, how do I want to put this? There's an element of increased exposure around certain things because there's an aesthetic, or what do you think is more influential in terms of like knowledge base? Because I think two of those in some instances have been blended very well together in certain people that I know in the industry, where there's the element of appearance and aesthetic, and then there's the element of knowledge, and both are representing that person simultaneously. And there, I think there's a high level of influence.
I think there's an interesting combination, but you would have to like break it down case by case, because I'm going to go ahead, and you're going to like this. This is going to be spicy. I'm going to point out, and I'm not going to point out a competitor. I'm going to point out a media outlet that has been around for years, and probably the website hasn't changed in 20 years, which is William Cooper, Cigar Coop. Coop is regarded as one of the, you know, most reputable, you know, media outlets with Cigar Coop in the industry. His website, his aesthetic, I mean, there's no aesthetic. I mean, his website looks like it hasn't been updated in 20 years.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's a guy that has a lot of experience, a lot of, you know, he's endured a lot. He's been around for 30, 40 years in the industry. He's been around for the three booms. And he gets a lot of credibility because of it. But maybe a newcomer would be attracted to, you know, let's use you guys for example. You know, I don't want to point out to other people. You guys have an amazing website, right? You're not using it like you were before, but maybe a newcomer that you know hasn't been around, that has no idea who Coop is probably going to, you know, to be more inclined to read your stuff before they know what the content is, just because of the aesthetic, right? You make it very pleasing. You break it down. It's a modern website. It's a good perspective. I mean, you know, titles, whatever. I'm again not content. Before we get into the content, like Cigar Coop, Hot Ticket Weekly. You know, let's say that hypothetically you're ranking the SEO, they're right next to each other. You open both tabs. Which one do you stay in? All right, if you're an old guy, if you've been around for a while, you're probably going to read Coop first.
Yeah.
But if you're a new guy, I'm going to make the bold statement that it's going to be like a 90-10, you know, you guys. Right. So I think aesthetics matters in some cases, and I think it's really just got to be broken down by case. But at the end of the day, if you're consistent, if you're objective if you're true to your fashion, if you're true to your modus operandi, I think that's when it's going to build the loyalty from the reader. But that's not necessarily linked to the knowledge base, right? Because at the end of the day, people are going to eventually be a lot of people. All right, who do I want to stick with?
Yeah, and so that's I think
that was my answer.
No, I think that's so to me that's really good because I did want to talk about there's a media aspect to it, right? And I was thinking even earlier again, I took like an obnoxiously long walk just to think of these things through because I couldn't do it just sitting down at my desk. I'm like, I needed to just like get out and think about it. And I thought about the media aspect. Like you have, like you mentioned, Coop, right? Old school, been doing it for a long time, recognized as someone who really knows their shit. Although aesthetically, both in website and in person, he definitely looks like Humpty Dumpty, and Chris and I do not. So there's that piece of it. Although I really actually like Coop a lot, so I just had to say it.
Yeah, me too.
And I admire and respect. I love listening to him, and I love reading all of his stuff. But I think you also have to, inclusive of that, think about somebody like a Cigar Aficionado or a Half Wheel or even some of the publications like Cigar Journal and so on. Like, what is the level of influence there? I think like the attention around something like Cigar Aficionado, I think would be not the same as Coop, but similar in terms of like the age range. Right? It's probably a lot of old school guys like to sit down in a magazine, flip some pages, and so on. And what's the level of influence that exists with something like Cigar Aficionado? And what is the long-term sustainability of that kind of publication? Like, does that ever get to a point where it dies off and it no longer makes sense? I've thought about that before, and I'm not saying like Cigar Aficionado is going to die off, and it could be long-lasting and go on forever and continue to build and grow and so on. But like, do those things change as a result of, new generational sweeps, the industry as a whole, new medians like podcast platforms? Does that erode some of the stuff? And you can't argue, Cigar Aficionado has been insanely influential to the cigar industry for a period of time. I would argue is one of the reasons the cigar industry is as big as it is today. So what happens with a publication like that and other publications that are like that?
Can we get it in an Audible book?
I read a cigar Audible and cigar book. I listened to it. I hate when people say, "Oh, I read a book," and then I'm like, "Oh, what book did you read?" And they're like, "Oh, it was like such and such on Audible." I was like, "Well, then you didn't read it. You listened to it." I would say I listened to a book because it's like I don't even want to challenge the thought process of me actually reading something. But I listened to a cigar book and it was interesting. I kind of digested a little bit of it to Chris yesterday, actually, or 2 days ago when he was over. But I think about the publication like Cigar Aficionado. Do you think that there's sustainability in that model, Alex, long term? Because they really haven't deviated from what they've done for a long time, like really at all. Even their website is kind of like, meh. It's the very so-so website, and they really live by that publication.
They've amassed such a bitch, for the in terms of, what media, the media target is. And that's still a demographic that's going to live on for a couple more decades, strong as they are, without really modifying too much their structure. But I mean, you start to see it for the first time ever. You go on starting this year. I mean, actually last year, 2020. You went on Cigar Aficionado, and for the first time, you start seeing ads, like ads for online retailers for the first time ever.
Right.
And, I think that may be a first, sight of how things are going to turn into in the next couple of years. I mean, they had a very strong, long-lasting policy that of, not working with any online retailer. And now they started doing it. They started, the Cigar Yard was the first online ad ever, January of 2020. So you see how they have to slowly, start shifting. I mean, they have a big power with Cigar Insider. You don't see that on the website, but Cigar Insider is massive.
Right.
And they have arguably one of the largest databases for the consumer base and for the market share. So they have the Insider app, the Insider subscription, which is separate from whatever Cigar Aficionado is. I believe that obviously that has to be, slowly shifting. But again, if you go back to understanding that we represent, and by we, I mean you two and myself, we represent a certain type of listener base and reader base that is, that just crosses over very mildly with what Cigar Aficionado does in their efforts, but there's still a large chunk of that demographic that represents a strong, purchasing power in the industry, and they're going to be around for a little while. So they should slowly start to shift to different things, but it's like, what are you going to do? Are you going to have just like Gordon Mott do a podcast? I mean,
Right.
He probably should, but is his money worth more on his time equals money? Is his money worth more on a podcast versus like editing the magazine, which I believe is not as strong as it used to be before, but it's still probably a very strong force in the industry and in the market share. So
Right.
there's two angles, right? It's a very interesting question, and I like the focus on Cigar Aficionado just because they're the largest. They're massive. They've been around the longest. They clearly changed the game, and they created a market, a large market for the media. I mean, there's guys that's starting podcasts today. There's guys that's starting podcasts every day and writing articles and copywriting for different publications. I mean, look at Tobacco Magazine, Tobacco Business, which we were very honored to be part of an article of in the last issue. I mean, their strong suit now is their online magazine. So, right. I mean, you see people drifting and changing, but how impactful is that going to be? Related to the question that you're asking, well, it's yet to be seen, man. There's two angles.
Yeah, I think about the demographic too. Not even so much the median, but the demographic. Like Cigar Aficionado, I would assume, I'm making assumptions here. I don't know for sure, but I highly doubt there's too many people that are around our age or younger that subscribe to the publication of Cigar Aficionado, meaning that the magazine shows up at their doorstep every single month. I suspect that's not the case. Demographically, I would say probably somewhere 45 age range and up, probably even to like 70-year-olds. I think is probably like their biggest demographic for the publication itself. So I often wonder, and we've talked about this before, ushering a new generation of cigar smokers. And this is an interesting statistic. I told Chris this the other day. And you, Alex, you may have heard of the name before. Huge bourbon connoisseur, and who I would consider very influential in the bourbon space, probably the most influential. His name's Fred Minnick. Fred Minnick, as it relates to bourbon, he actually showed a statistic, and it was, I forget what the sample size was, but it was essentially a demographic of people who preferred bourbon over other said liquors, right? Like bourbon is their highest preference. And surprisingly to me, 82% represented demographic was millennials. And I was like, holy shit. Like, wow. I thought for sure it would be a higher age range. So I wonder if there is some sort of correlation to that, even with cigars, because I think it's that leisure aspect. So I make this connection to younger generations, even millennial generations, because cigars and bourbon aren't cheap, as I think the millennial generation is deeply embedded into their careers, starting to make money, but also recognizing that relaxation and leisure is a wonderful spice of life. That does there a correlation with like cigars? And then how is that represented in with some of these publications? And I think about someone like Half Wheel that I think is like somewhere in between Cigar Aficionado and then just, I don't even know. I think they're more, obviously it's an online presence, but they would probably, in terms of the biggest represented like online besides Cigar Aficionado, everybody knows Half Wheel. And to a degree where it's like Half Wheel covers everything. They don't miss anything. Yep. They cover literally everything. I don't even know how the fuck they do it. It's like the shit that they fucking uncover. It's like, how much time in a day do you have to publish all this shit? It's just dumbfounding to me. But like, what about the level of influence of someone like a Half Wheel who has a very strong online presence, but does it create some sort of correlation and what's the generational impact of them? And even around the expertise, there's essentially three main guys that work in Half Wheel that do pretty much all the writing and editing. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's three. It's like, what kind of level of influence they have? And how does that kind of correlate to Cigar Aficionado? Is it like Half Wheel's eating the lunch of Cigar Aficionado day in and day out? Or do they kind of have this own lane that they kind of stay in, and that's where they're going to kind of operate for an extended period of time?
I mean, well, it depends how you measure it. I mean, if you're measuring it on clicks, there's just a massive crossover. If you're measuring on content, there's very little crossover. I mean, every now and then you'll have Half Wheel release like the new, C Series E, right? So John has a good relationship with Cigar Aficionado, I believe, because they cover his stuff because you know, there's reasons behind it. So there's reasons why there would be some coverage behind that, and then there's that particular news on that product. But then again, there's 20 product releases on that week that are not going on Cigar Aficionado, but they are going on Half Wheel. So Half Wheel has all this industry related, strictly like within the industry related news, like if it's not like a big legal FDA whatever news, Cigar Aficionado won't write about it. They'll write something like, FDA grants 3-year period for substantial equivalence reports, whatever. That's big. So they'll cover that. But then again, they won't cover something like FDA delays testing for 2 weeks in Arizona's new lab, whatever. I'm just making random stuff up.
No,
if it's not impactful, they're not going to cover it, right? So there's a lot of crossover in terms of clicks, in terms of hits, in terms of certain demographics and certain measuring widgets, call it this. But in terms of content, I think they're very, very contrasting.
Yeah, I agree. And actually, you use the example. I was going to take it a little bit further. It's like specifically around like regulatory stuff. I mean, Half Wheel will break it down to a particular municipality. It's like Connecticut city, blah, 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 implements 21 and over smoking laws or citywide smoking ban. Like they do that on the regular. And I mean, it's like everything related to cigars, Half Wheel is essentially on top of. I do wonder about this, and I kind of want to shift a different direction from an influential perspective, because the impact, and I'm going to say this because there has been a major impact of this, is why so many people have replicated it. Cigar scoring in the industry as it relates to reviews. Chris and I, we still do it. We usually do it more on kind of a fun, jovial basis, and really recommendations come down to like, did we fucking like it or did we not? Do we highly recommend it? Like go and grab it off the shelves or not? And I think that to me, there's more, I personally feel, and this is probably an association to what I just feel is the right way to do it. And this is just our perspective on it. But there's the right way for us to represent what a cigar is by just being like, you should fucking go buy it, and based on what we believe, or you shouldn't go buy it.
Completely agree. And I'll go as far as related back to what you were saying in terms of the impact, the long-term impact and influence. Who in the world made up breaking down cigars into quarters or
thirds?
Or like thirds? Like who said that a cigar is supposed to change on a third or on a quarter, on a fourth, right? Like who made that up? Well, it was probably Cigar Aficionado or somebody else in the 90s. There was one or two other guys that made up the fact that when you break down a cigar, there's changes and there's difference between balances and complexities and what happens. Like cigar, actually, it has complexity or it hasn't. It's balanced all throughout or it doesn't. Like I'm even a victim of doing it sometimes, and then I'm like, who in the world told me I have to break it down by thirds? It's like, wait. Everybody does it. It's like first third, second third, literally.
Right. Yeah,
everybody does it. It's like it started somewhere back in the 90s, like when first reviews were coming out, like saying like they were even the rankings or whatever. Reviews, breakdown of the cigar. Third, who told you have to do that? Like who's like? There's not even a scientific backing. Like there's no technical backing that when you break down a cigar, you have to measure it by thirds or like changes or whatever. I mean, you can technically say the change in flavor to balance out. Like when a cigar is made, it's made a certain way with intentionality behind it, right? So if the bunch is bunched in a certain way, it's bunched that way for the cigar to taste that way or to perform on a certain fashion. Now, if a cigar is bunching away in an inconsistent way, you're going to get different flavors. If it's bunching away in a particular in a particular way, up towards the foot, or there's a roller, or there's a pair that breaks down a half in a separate, in a different way. The cigar is going to give you a different experience. It's not going to be drastically experienced if the tobacco is consistent and the blend is true, or actually legitimate. But there isn't supposed to be a technical breakdown in thirds based on the scientific, on the actual science of the cigar,
right.
of how it's constructed. So I believe that's funny, and that ties back to what you were saying. How influential is that? Well, what angle of that influence are you looking at? I mean, you look at sales, and you look at brand impact. We get calls and emails and from the UK and Canada every day. I want to go ahead and say every single day we get Canadians. Oh, whatever. I see a lot of people posting, but I can't order it. How did they get it? I'm like, I have no idea why this person is posting, because we are not shipping there yet. And it's that's cool. We're getting that positive brand impact in this country, and we're not even selling there. So in the monetary aspect, that effort that led us to these guys calling us and constantly email us isn't represented in a monetary analytic, but more of a brand impact. So it depends on the angle on how you're looking at it.
Right.
Did you grow 1,000 subscribers or not? How real are those subscribers? I mean, we're doing a giveaway, right? So we haven't done a giveaway in a while, and Bourbon Stills Mills, he's a cool guy. He hit me up. He's like, dude, you want to do a giveaway? I'm like, sure, man, whatever you need. I'm like, oh, I even asked what the rules were going to be. He's like, follow my cigar pack. And I'm getting follows of a bunch of the bourbon crowd.
Right.
I don't know how impactful that's going to be long-term for my cigar pack. I know there's definitely a crossover from bourbons and cigars, and know that, but how impactful is that going to be to the brand? I'm just thinking out loud, not because I care, because obviously a pack, I'll be glad to support anybody else. Dude, you want to do a giveaway? Yeah, dude. I mean, between your friends, probably not. But if you're a guy that wants to create an impact with your channel, all right, sure, let's do it. Why not? What's the worst that can happen is somebody got a nice pack of cigars, and it's linked to us. So I'm trying to, I'm not thinking I would just think automatically. I'm just expressing myself how I believe I should look at it in terms of what you're asking. That's just a little disclaimer there, because I'm happy to support people.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a good thought, because that was actually another part of the conversation. I did want to just expand on, because you were talking about the first, second, and the last thirds of a cigar, and how that's represented from multiple publications, including Half Wheel. I mean, Half Wheel is literally, it's broken down first, second, thirds. And here's the thing about Half Wheel, and I'm just making an assumption here, and this is not a bash on Half Wheel at all. Their reviews of cigars are so intensely descriptive, so there's a lot of content. But I imagine, and I'm guilty of doing this, sometimes I don't have time to scroll down a page and read everything. So maybe I'll read kind of what the flavor notes are, and then I'll skip down to the summary and the score. And what does that score represent? What are their thoughts and feel? And here's the thing. As somebody who smokes cigars as regular as I do, I really don't pay attention to scores. Even from a cigar aficionado, although I have to say, I do more now admire what Cigar Aficionado does from a review perspective, because they've collapsed the reviews significantly. They aren't huge dissertations. They are very collapsed into one paragraph. And here's basically a summary of the experience, which I personally enjoy because it's very digestible. But everybody has their own methods of doing it. But I always come back to the impact of score, which originated really around wine and spirits. That is where those kinds of scores were really kind of derived from. And the especially the wine industry, it's here's these flavor notes of wine, and here's this impacted score that exists at the end, right? One kind of curtailed from wine. From originally Cigar Aficionado, correct me if I'm wrong, the guy who started Cigar Aficionado was originally doing publications in wine. Am I crazy in saying that? Because I'm pretty sure that's the truth. At least someone at Cigar Aficionado was like interrelated to wine.
Wine Spectator, yes, correct.
Right. So I think one base has kind of curtailed itself into the other in terms of the scoring mechanism, which has been widely adopted to this day. What do you feel? Do you feel that there's a profound impact those scores have? I mean, Cigar Aficionado releases their top 25. Everybody basically mimics that, their top cigars of the year. Chris and I do it from a podcast perspective. What do you think as far as that kind of impact? And do you think that has long-term sustainability? Because when you talk about a level of influence, a score in the industry has been intensely influential. You think about even the last year, you've got the Epicurio Pledge. Look at that fucking cigar. The other thing was flying off the shelves, just as the Andalusian Bull did, just as like the Prensado did. I mean, all these cigars that have been the top-rated cigars, Cigar Aficionado of however long, tend to fly off the shelves, like to the point where manufacturers are like prepping for those releases because they know they have to have enough product available to send out to the marketplace.
But all right, let me actually, let me transform my answer into a question. Do you see that impact on like a number 5 or 6?
No.
Okay.
Well, I've always said this with Cigar Aficionado. The best cigars that they rate are typically the bottom 5. So 20 through 25 are typically the ones that I go, oh, those are the best ones. That's just. I always tell people, I was like, just flip it, invert it, and those are, to me, those are typically the best ones. But I get where you're going with your question, and I understood. But what about other publications? Half Wheel does theirs, and they do theirs in a much more complex manner because, well, I don't want to say complex manner in terms of the cigars themselves, but they rate a lot of different things. Like they rate brands, like they have rating systems around all kinds of stuff. Do you think there's a high level of impact there? And do you think that it correlates at all, even close to Cigar Aficionado?
I don't think it's close. I don't think it's close, and that's just my personal, really unbiased, but also very I have no foundation to say what I'm saying, but I believe they don't really translate the way they do, just because I find it funny when,
like, what's that? We just all fucking freeze.
Alex, you're breaking up. We just all froze at the same time, though. I bet anybody watching this right now is like, what the fuck just happened?
There's something wrong with the YouTube video.
No, we're still here. Alex, you're breaking up. I feel like whatever he's saying right now is so profound and it's probably so impactful. We're just missing the best part of the context.
It's
Chris,
so good. He crashed.
Chris, you just you just see a giant fireball. God, that would be terrible. Chris, what do you think? Like you've been, I'm asking kind of pointed questions to Alex, but like, what are your thoughts? You broke up there, bud. But I just asked Chris kind of the same question, so I'm curious to see what he thinks. You're on mute right now, but I can read lips, and I think you just did your lips. Yeah, you're on mute, but I think your lips said like "fuck Cigar Aficionado" and Half Wheel.
Well,
I didn't say. Wait. When so when you guys were talking, you were saying that everybody froze up. I was listening to everything, so I just disconnected and reconnected. I heard everything.
So you indeed, did not get in a car accident.
I did not. But hey, so I was, shit, I lost my line. So I was saying, it's like, so if you're gonna buy, so you bought new equipment, right, Corey? You bought new equipment, and I don't know. I mean, I know you have certain you've got certain awareness in the appliances industry, but I don't know if you know a lot about like camera lenses, right? And you bought new equipment recently, right? So first thing you do is, like, if you have a Canon or a Sony, you Google best Sony E-frame lenses or best Canon D5 lenses or whatever.
Right.
You're gonna get an SEO fight. The first thing you're gonna see is a little carousel with videos, and then you're gonna see probably like BH Photo, I think. BH is like the largest. Yep. B&H Photo, and then you're gonna get somebody else in second, and then you're gonna get like Sony or whatever, or Canon. First thing you're going to click, you're obviously going to open the tab for BH Photo, right? And they're going to give you a list off their top 5 lenses. And then you're going to see a video, and then you're going to see John Cooper. I'm just making up the name. John Cooper is somebody that you've obviously seen before doing super high-end videos, breaking down. This is the guy you're going to see first. And after you see that, because you're buying a luxury good, because you're buying a $300, $400, $500 piece of equipment, you're probably going to have to want to look at a backup. But if you consistently see something on the first source, which is the most reputable one, that's the one that you're going to stick to. So people that don't have the access to trying cigars all the time are probably the best clients for the top 25s, and they're going to look for the ones that have the most reputation, which is the one that has been doing it for the longest, which is in this case Cigar Aficionado. That's why I believe that's really the most impactful. And then if you see that everybody else is doing it and they don't have that reputability that Cigar Aficionado has, just because they have been doing it for so long, and other reasons, obviously I'm not taking credit away from them, they're very reputable, and then you stick to your source. But everybody, like, if you see a top 25 cigar, if you're a smoker and you constantly buy cigars, you're subscribed to My Cigar Pack, just kidding, to any subscription, or you buy online, chances are you've tried this cigar. And if you have access to it, you're going to buy it naturally. Now, when you get a number 1 from Cigar Aficionado, or a number 2 or number 3, you get the top 5 cigars, and this is regarded as, the most reputable publication that has been doing it for the longest, you're going to be inclined to see how the mass reacts. And if everybody reacts the same, well, you're going to buy it. That's what I believe. There's like an interesting funnel for that one. But then everybody else, like, I mean, Half Wheel isn't specialized in breaking down, products like Cigar Aficionado has been for so long. I mean, they do a bunch of reviews, and they have been progressing into doing reviews in the last 5, 6, 7 years, but they're a news outlet. Cigar Aficionado is not really a news outlet. It's a magazine that curates the luxury lifestyle behind cigars. And if the most reputable and most long-standing magazine tells you these are the cigars that you have to smoke, and there's 25, you're like, all right, let me stick to the first 4 or 5, because every cigar published here is like $12, $15. Let me stick to that. I think that's going to create a snowball effect, and it's going to give that relevancy. And I'm just like rambling, just talking.
No. It's good.
First thing that comes out of my head, but I believe that's kind of like the natural effect on the validation that it has versus, everybody else doing it. Right. Unless you're like a loyal, say Cigar Snob reader.
Right. Yeah. And one of the things I was wondering in just what you were saying is, I kind of wonder, do people, as they gain more experience and knowledge, or even just smoke more cigars in general, do they start to migrate away from publications? Do they feel like, from a palatability perspective and just their knowledge base and just their exposure to cigars, the impact of something like Cigar Aficionado starts to diminish to a degree, or even any other publication that really kind of has like a top cigar pick? Because I know, like, for me, and I'm only speaking from personal experience, when I see the publication, I read it every single time, and I'm curious to see. My curiosity isn't more, it's not aligned with what's in the top 25. Boy, do I need to get my hands on it. It's, I want to know what the top 25 is, so I can actually insert my thoughts on those cigars that I've probably already have. Do I agree? Is there elements of agreements? Is there elements of disagreements, and so on? Do you think as people get more knowledge and experience, do they do more of that with the publication?
Well, I think you know why? Because you have the access to all that product. You're constantly connected to the industry, and you're like, I could have tried that.
The pledge, though. The Pledge was an
What's up with the
anomaly
Pledge?
because it didn't come out yet. And it was already being touted as being the potential number one, and it hadn't even reached mass retail outlets yet. So it's a very interesting thing. I think for most brands that might make that list, yeah, the stuff might have been out already. You know, it might be something that came out IPCPR or PCA or whatever.
Like you're
know?
suggesting that the Pledge was almost too coincidental.
Too coincidental.
We've talked about that on the podcast, and I'm only speculating.
I
It's like a
remember
it's conspiracy theory, really, essentially. But you know, we do have some information that would suggest that there was certain things that are in alignment that created kind of the output of the endeavor of number one in terms of the EP Korea Pledge. But
let's assume that there's probably cigars that haven't come out yet that might make the list, and some cigars that have been out for a little bit.
Like the Oliva V, Oliva V just makes every single top
keeps
five.
making the list.
And you know what's crazy is that fucking cigar is phenomenal.
It's very good.
It's so good. Like forever be in the top five. Like that's fine by me. I'm cool with it. I like that cigar that much. I'm like, just keep being in the top five. You're
I think a seasoned smoker will cross-reference sources to validate or invalidate whether or not there's a striking interest for a cigar that they might not have had yet that makes these top 25 lists. Because I might see a cigar be top 3 on Cigar Aficionado, and I don't see that bitch anywhere else online. Like, it's not even in the top 3 on 3 other different review sites. Now, granted, there's so many cigars to smoke from. Not everybody gets their hands on it. I get that. But at the end of the day, I mean, the way I can look at it is if I was a casual smoker and I wanted to know what the top thing is, it's kind of like the Olympics, right? Can anybody really remember after a week or two who fourth or fifth place was?
Yeah, you
Was it
never.
second place?
No,
but you'll remember first place.
You remember
bet your ass you'll remember first place.
Usain Bolt and Phelps and Simone Biles, but the little Asian girl who rocked it, I don't even know her name. Kim Chung, I don't know her name. Like, I have no idea what her fucking name is. Yeah, that's that's a good point, Alex. I'm curious about the impact of those publications on what you do in terms of curating the packs. Like Cigar Aficionado comes out with its top 25 and you see this mad blitz for retailers to order that product because obviously it's going to fly off the shelves. It's good for business. Do you feel the same way in terms of the curation of your packs, or do you kind of have another methodology that you put into place?
Oh my
God. Another methodology.
Okay. Which is fine. I admire and respect that. And it's probably one of the reasons I think we always align so well. And here's the thing. I'm not suggesting that there's a right or wrong way to do things. It's just like when I go to a retailer, it's not uncommon. I know you've seen this. You go to a retailer and below the EP Korea Pledge is the tag that says Cigar Aficionado 2020, top cigar, right? Because they want to advertise that cigar for anybody who's walking in there, suggesting that this is the number one. So pick this, pick me. That's what it says. It screams on the shelves, pick me, pick me, pick me. There's nothing wrong with that strategy. If you're a B&M, like you fucking do that. That's a smart move to make if you've got the product to sell.
Correct.
So, all right, shifting gears again. I know there's going to be a part 2 to this for sure. And because we haven't even broached probably the most controversial topic surrounding this, but I like the direction that we've gone in terms of the publication aspect, because when we talk about the level of influence that publications have had for a period of years, and this is pre-social media, it's very impactful. Like, you can't deny that. We've obviously seen variances and differences. Now we're in this podcast world. There's this median. And really 4 years ago when Chris and I started this podcast, I could have counted on both of my hands the number of cigar podcasts that exist. Now I would need 10 pairs of hands to count all the ones that exist. I like that personally. I like that people are using the median to broadcast their opinions, thoughts, and feelings and expertise around things. I think it's cool. I've never even viewed that as competition. It's the more exposure to the cigar industry, the better, right? You create these niche audiences, which is great. So I see that, the podcast medium, especially as it correlates to a younger generation, is going to be a very popular medium for people to digest information, news, and to a degree reviews on cigars. Do you see, I mean, obviously we have partnered together for a considerable amount of time. Do you see that same kind of trend continuing on? And then like, what would be next? Like, what's an evolution of, I say garnering some exposure around cigars moving forward? Is there this next idea? Is there this next thing? Is there a next level of influence that can exist that we haven't really yet thought of today or is on the horizon? Chris is
wow,
gonna,
that's a good question. Chris, you take it first.
Virtual cigar lounges. I said it right there. Boom.
Speed dating for cigars. Think about
I
it.
have one, but I don't want to say it.
Why not?
Why? Because it's
You
too
don't want
good
to
of
give
an
up.
idea.
You don't give up your idea.
Yeah, I get ya.
I think.
Oh, you know what it is.
I know what it is, and I'm not going to say it. I do think there is, as technology develops, and now we talk, I mean, here, the industry has already kind of coined what a virtual cigar lounge is, and Zoom is not a virtual cigar lounge.
No.
A bunch of chodes sitting on a fucking Zoom on a Friday night, just, one hand is on their dick while the other one's smoking a cigar, is not a virtual lounge. But I do think there's an element of technology as it continues to advance that's going to create an environment for people to really feel like they're encapsulated by an environment that they would otherwise get at a cigar lounge, that they can do more in a virtual effort. I do feel like there's going to be a trend that's going to exist where that's going to be like a median of like a mass broadcast of like, and let's just use particular manufacturer as an example, like a virtual event. And I don't mean virtual in the terms of which we used during COVID-19 last year, where it was like, let's all get on a Zoom and again, fucking putts around, our dick in one hand and smoke in the other. I really mean like a fully immersive environment that can really create this like a feeling around cigar smoking in an event type manner. I do think that that's something that is going to happen in the probably more in the short term and the long term. And I think that could be, even from accessibility, could be very impactful. I'm only speculating. I don't know. I'm not an expert. I just think about some of those things. Do you feel that there's other medians besides the one that you won't tell us that could be impactful in the long term, especially as it relates to younger generations? There's no way, 65-year-old retired guy is going to put on a set of VR goggles and hang out on a line. I just don't see that being a thing. But I could certainly see other people doing that.
Yeah, I believe there's other medians. I mean, it's funny when you talk about Clubhouse. Clubhouse is just another Zoom hangout without video, and it's like
right,
more of the same. So I wouldn't really take the technological angle, but more of like, the accessibility to things that people don't have access to. It's like bringing that to life through certain channels. I really don't know exactly what way, but I believe like people want to see more. People want more knowledge. People want more validity, or I'll rather say validation on the branding, on the marketing, on what's truly behind a product or a brand, not just hang out with other people. Because I kind of don't agree so much in the technological angle, because I mean, we want to be more like, this is a personal thing. A cigar is a personal thing. These platforms are great. They're good communication channels. They're good ways to like engage with people and conversations, stuff like that. But it's just super limiting based on what you're doing. It's like, you're not play like you can record yourself shooting hoops, but you can't play basketball with someone else. If you were each record each other, it's something that you enjoy doing together. I mean, I'll enjoy a cigar by myself in my car, but I'd rather like talk to somebody and Like that's the romanticism behind this thing, which is so personal. So I hope there's a super cool angle like the VR, virtual reality behind, putting those VR goggles and stuff like that. Not like a Zoom, but yeah, like you were saying, like putting on some VR goggles and going to an event and then having, like, say Lido pop up to that event actually in person, be by himself there, do an event in his office and have everybody put VR goggles and like have a conversation, live conversation, stuff like that. But I think there's other mediums. I think there's other channels that can fulfill more of what people really want, which is like knowledge, validation, just a different angle that isn't just let's hop on and smoke together behind each other's computer. There's something with more of a personal angle.
Right.
I want to see the cigar industry as a religion.
It is, Chris. It's called Hiram and Solomon, dude. Come on.
That's true. I want to see the first astronaut smoking a cigar in space.
Oh, that's cool.
Can't wait. I don't think you can.
I want to see tobacco grown in so many new parts of the world through clever hydroponic systems.
Oh, that's great.
Chris on his hydroponics again. Jesus Christ.
Oh, it's fantastic. I love that.
But there's so many things you could do, bro, for the future of this industry. Like Costa Rica's like, nah, we can't do it. I feel like it's the wrong accent, but it's like, we can't do it. We can't do it.
It's like, we can't do it.
But you
like
could
a mix of French and Italian.
But you could take seeds from any fucking amazing place in the world and grow tobacco anywhere in the world through clever hydroponic systems. And
it's challenging for mass production, though. I think that's where you're going to be limited.
True.
Because there's people who grow tobacco plants in their house.
Sure.
I mean, they literally sell kits to do that. I get what you're saying though, like other clever ways to like grow tobacco. Like, yeah, I understand that. So topically, I just want to shift gears and we'll end on this topic because I would say the topic people probably want us to talk about most is definitely going to come in part 2. But one of the things I was thinking about, Alex, and I was thinking about like certain, I would say owners and or brand ambassadors in the industry and the kind of impact that they have. Like there's certain names that you hear. Perfect example, Robert Caldwell, right? Like Robert Caldwell, I don't think you can argue is a very influential person in the cigar industry. You have guys like John Huber, you have Matt Booth, you have the folks at Davidoff. Obviously, you have the Fuente family, you have EP, like all these ginormous brands. All these guys are insanely influential in the cigar industry because one, they produce tobacco, they grow tobacco, they roll the cigars, they sell the cigars. There's representation literally from seed to shelf, right? And everything that exists with the blends that they come out with. Do you look at is there like a hierarchy to brand representation? Like all the way from ownership down to even the guys who are feet on the street selling it? Because I often think about that too, as far as like, people participate in events, right? You go to a cigar event at a shop, right? And you've got a representative of a brand or a broker, depending on who it is, that's representing brands. There's obviously an element of influence there as well. Do you still see that being highly impactful, not only today, but do you see that being highly impactful in the future? Like those types of events in terms of how they're actually going out and representing their brands. And do you see maybe a shift or an adjustment in that? We saw that with COVID-19, although I don't think it was ideal for those brands. I think they adapted to what they could do. But like, what's the progression of that? And do you think like someone like if VP Carrillo talks or Nestor Perillo, he talks, or a Carlito Fuente talks, are people listening? And are they absorbing and are they digesting and then making an informed decision based upon what these folks in the industry are saying?
I think if it keeps shifting towards the experience versus the sales, I think that's more impactful, and I think that's truly the way to go. Like I've been having multiple conversations with brands, big and small, and they'll make funny stories about how they do events, and they'll go and be the personalities, and like half or a portion of the attendees are just super engaged in the conversation. They're stargaze. They're really happy to be, chatting it up, and they want it to be an enriching experience with that manufacturer, versus the other portion, which is more of like, I'm here for the 5 and 2, and I'm here for 2 free cigars. I'm here for the drinks and the good time. So I believe that there is a transition and a shift to make it more fun, but at the same time, more of the engagement, the personal engagement and the personal connection, which is going to make a more of a long-term impact versus just make it of a threshold kind of thing. Let's meet 20K in sales. Let's try to move this product. Let's try to create an awareness that this retailer bought $50,000 of cigars. It's more, I wanted to see it more shifting towards, and I believe it can shift more towards the, the experience and the engagement and the brand value, the value of, like, if there's people that have created that, like Fuente, their cigars sell by themselves. So when Fuente, when Carlitos goes to an event, it's amazing to see that guy, because like people say that all the time. Like, he almost makes you want to cry. He's always so emotional, so passionate about everything that he talks about, that it makes the experience of going to an event to a Fuente event with Carlito there so positive and so enriching and such an amazing experience. Like, you'd rather do that than, go on a trip or whatever. That's the equivalent to what people that go to these events compare it to, versus, I was at X brand's event and this guy was there and we shook hands, took a picture, and I got a great deal on the cigars. But that experience isn't that enriching, like, like a Carlito experience. I just take him as an example just because he's got to the fortune, and by fortune I mean he's worked towards the fortune that he's built the brand so strong that sells itself. I mean, it's always in back order. You can't find his cigars. A lot of his cigars, shops can't get it. And it's just a product that's going to keep you selling out as soon as it gets to shelves. So when you take that angle, you take that focus on creating a connection with certain individual in your event, or the collective individuals in your event, that's more impactful long term. So I do want to see, I think it's going to keep happening, but I do want to see it more on that angle versus, sales versus specials.
That's an interesting take, because I've been to events where it's one and maybe the other, and then events where it's a hybrid, where it's really like, hey, and you said it right off the bat, there's some people there for the experience, to sit down, to have a discussion, to really get a better understanding of the brand for whoever's there representing. And there's other people who are like, what deals do you have for me today? If I buy 5, do I get 2 for free or whatever? Or there's a giveaway, or there's an entry for this particular thing. I see a lot of that hybrid approach. I've always found, for me, it tends to be, like you, much more meaningful, certainly when I can sit down and talk to someone. And I've had both. I've had one where, I won't name the brand, X brand shows up, does an event, and the whole thing was centered around, the first part of the conversation, and not that this particular person knew who the hell I was. It didn't fucking make a difference. The first part of the conversation was, here's the deals that I have. Here's what we have laid out on the spread. We're doing this, buy this, and get one of these free, or you can buy this. And it was like, it went straight to, these are the deals of the day, where I would have much rather had a conversation about, even the tobacco or the process or the brand as a whole. Like, let's just say,
and you would have gladly paid full price.
Dude, I only pay full price. I never buy any of those deals. I only pay full price.
Let me see if I can sell you here for a second. Let's pretend you guys are at an event and I'm the owner of this brand. You don't know if I'm reputable or not, but you come up and talk to me. And you're like, so, like, what got you into cigars? And it's like, well, in 1934, my great-grandfather started up his own tobacco business after being impaled in the lung as a what do they call those bull people? What are they called?
Matadors.
Matadors. And his dream was crushed, and that's how he got into tobacco. But you know, his story didn't end there. Shortly thereafter, after raising crops, it was hit with great famine and disease, losing all the crops, and his family was left poor and out in the rain with no place to provide food for his kids, my father and his wife, and 3 children. And they were poor, but they persevered, they pushed through, and they rebuilt their farms and produced tobacco and began to branch out of Nicaragua and moved to the States. And the brand that you see in front of you right now at this table is all the hard work of my family's generations, my great-grandfather, my grandfather, my dad, me. And that's what you see in front of you. And you know what's crazy? I'm gonna give you a little bit. What we charged in cigars back in 1944 for one stick was $10, 10 US dollars. And guess what? That $10 is the same deal we have here at this table right here. So you can get that same cigar for $10. The same price that we had set back in 1944. You can get that same fucking cigar for $10.
Chris, interestingly enough, do you know how much a cigar cost back in 1944?
20 cents.
Actually, that's pretty accurate. Yeah, it was a variation anywhere from 10 to 20 cents per cigar.
Not this brand.
ultra premium. Had to make up for that famine loss. I will say this. So interestingly enough, and I guess it all depends on who you're talking to as well. It's like if you're talking to Carlito, there's an intimate connection with the brand because of the legacy that exists.
Yeah.
But let's just say hypothetically that that conversation doesn't exist with Carlito, and maybe it exists with one of his sales pawns. That's a bad way of saying it. Let's just say one of his guys that is just representing the brand in the field. Like, do you have that same garnered connection? Like, is it as meaningful?
You could. I'm honestly, like, you have to have a face that provides value to the brand and at the same time provides a value to the consumer. Not just send a guy because he's great at expressing himself and just, translating the story. I mean, there has to be a history behind it, and there should be. That's why I believe that there's a lot of dues to be paid in this industry. I believe there's a lot of dues just because everything is so relative. Everything is, everybody could be an expert. So there's got to be a history behind it. Doesn't have to be linked to your grandfather being a matador and then moving to Nicaragua. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to be a 5th generation, but there has to be a true passion and a true history. Like I was connected with one of a big brand's director of sales, and he told me that he'd only been in the position for like 2.5 years, and his time in the industry is just a couple of years. But he told me that at the end, I felt so much knowledge, so much energy, so much passion that he could have definitely posed as somebody that has been for a long time in the industry and that really is moved by what it means to be in the cigar industry and what it means, to be working with that brand and how that person represents the brand. So I think there's got to be a combination of both. Obviously, you can't just send a local rep and be like, hey, dude, just go do an event.
Right.
Just be passionate. Just speak from the heart. It's cool and everything, but there's got to be an angle.
I got one.
I
got one.
But okay, bring it.
You know what I did before I started making these cigars?
What?
Smoking crack.
No way.
living on the streets.
He's like, I have experience smoking.
Yeah.
Do you go to rehab, dude?
My parole officer says, you know what?
What?
One more time you smoke that crack, you're going to prison for life. And what he said was,
the turning point?
he's like, there's much better things to smoke out there than crack cocaine. And you know what he did? He said to me, he's like, I know you've got your
I can guess. He gave you a Macanudo.
Macanudo. Sure did. Sure did.
Oh, that's fucking great.
Ever since then, I cleaned up, got that ankle bracelet off of me, cleaned up my act, started learning about cigars and tobacco. I haven't touched crack in 15 years.
Amen, brother.
So let's this is my last question for you, Alex, and then what we're gonna do is we're gonna just I'm curious about what's coming out in the September pack. So we'll talk about that in a second. But the last part of this, as it relates to influence at a brand level or manufacturing level, what is to be done with newer brands? Fuente has a legacy in the industry, and everybody starts somewhere. That's what I always tell people. Like, some people are like, don't start a brand, don't do this. This is like an impossible endeavor. But everybody started somewhere, and most of those legacies come with a lot of trials and tribulations. Like, none of them were ever smooth. There's not one of them that's been like, everything's been great since the early 1900s. No, it's like shit got fucked up for a while, and we had to migrate here, and then we had to reproduce here, and then we had to do this thing. And it's a lot of time and attention and effort and growth over a period of time. There's a lot of challenging endeavors that come along with some of these brands that started that have created legacies in the industry. So for a new brand, how do you create influence in the cigar industry? Like, how do you set yourself apart from everybody else? And that in tandem with, there's so many good brands that exist out there, and there's so much tobacco to be utilized. It's really, someone says before, everyone's creating good cigars. They're not all equal,
well, the thing is, there's a lot of access to manufacturers. Like, there's a lot of brands that are making good stuff, but they don't have a factory, so they're buying from the same guys that are making the good stuff that you've been smoking for years. So right. What I say to that is, there has to be intentionality behind creating that. There has to be some sort of link between why you decided to get into this industry, and then when you have that, and when it's real, when it's authentic, you stay consistent with that. You don't cut corners, and you just, like, again, linking to the consistency, you build on that, because people can see right through. The market is so big that there's going to be a chunk that's going to inevitably and undoubtedly buy cigars from you, but they're going to see where you come from, and they're going to see, that your cigar that is priced in $7 or $8, it's gonna be worth it until you build enough time to release a $13-14 cigar. But if you come up and you just claim to be a luxury brand or whatever, and you just brand, it's literally creating labels and marketing behind a cigar that you bought from Plasencia or from whoever, and charging $17, where you're not going to be that successful. And if you're successful, it's not going to last a long time.
Right.
I believe it's not going to last a long time.
Yeah, like there's going to be some attrition.
There's got to be a link. And there's space enough for you to go open up a shop somewhere else. Not somewhere else, just somewhere. Open up a shop or do something related to get your foot inside the industry, but don't necessarily jump into the brand if there's no true link. If you're retired, if you just hit the jackpot, you retired early from finance, or you whatever the case is, maybe you're older than that, and you retired at the time that you got to retire, and let me open up a cigar brand just because it's fun, and maybe it's not going to work out. It's probably not going to work out, and it shouldn't work out.
Yeah. Do you find that now more so than ever, because I've kind of seen this, where I don't want to call them gimmicks necessarily, but there seems to be brands that are just like, that look to create a niche, but the niche almost seems kind of gimmicky. It seems like the play is not authentic. It's insincere.
It's so funny. It's so funny that I know exactly who you're talking about. Like when I know who you're thinking
know.
of when you say that.
I did
And
too.
I'm pretty sure I was thinking of the same person, same brand when I said what I said.
We'll say same
Right?
person
So-
too. Yeah.
Yeah. We'll
And-
talk about
Well,
it
it's
later.
interesting because I mean we're saying one person, but I've seen it. I'm obviously we are talking about the same person, but I've seen it.
1,000%.
I've seen it even
Actually,
beyond that.
7,000%.
Oh yeah. So I'm like wondering if we're going to see more because it feels like everybody, especially because accessibility, as you said, I can go tomorrow. Let's just say, for instance, I can go to Aganorsa and say I have $50,000 and I want to blend. They're going to fucking blend something for me. They're going to do it. They're going to do it. And I could say I started a brand and here's my cigar and I can output it either, through, an internet vehicle or maybe try to do feet on the street and build the brand that way. But I agree with what you're saying in terms of intentionality around it. And not only that, like, I don't think any brand needs to be so vastly different in an approach, but I do agree with you in the fact that like some people do seem to be very unauthentic or, you can see through people where it's like less a passion play. Like you can see it, right? It's like, it's not what is represented in the cigar, but maybe it's more represented in what I want this lifestyle to be for me personally and what I want it to represent in the industry, not necessarily what I want the belief to be from the consumer, which is two very different things. So I will, I'll end on that because part 2 will be probably the more interesting of the topics, but I'm glad we got to do this one. So Alex, I was very curious as far as now we're in September. I will say this, you and I had a discussion, I don't know how many weeks ago, a couple weeks ago, in terms of the factory direct that you produced. And it was weird how we both kind of stated the same thing about the cigar. And I told you, I was like, it was a cigar that when I first started smoking and I was like, what the fuck is this? Like almost like it was curious, but at the same time, the curiosity was met with like, do I actually like this? And they kind of got halfway through the cigar and I was like, holy shit, this is fucking incredible. Dude, they're all gone. Like I smoked the fuck out of those things. I really, 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 really enjoyed that release. That was like my kind of cigar. Like that's my profile. I loved it. So the August packs were pretty dope for sure. So what's coming in September? What do we got coming in this month?
So we got the antique line. The antique line is so I was with Caldwell right now. We're linking up to do something else very, very soon. But we've been hanging out for a couple months, working on some ideas, and one of them was he wanted to release something that was up to par with the production that he had encountered. And he's like, I'm done with like bundles, whatever. This stuff is just too good. And that was his angle. I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about, but let's smoke it. So we smoked and it was just ridiculously good. But then again, there's ridiculously good cigars priced at like the Juarez. I think it should be like a $13 cigar. It's priced at $6.
Yeah, agreed.
And then there's again shitty cigars that are priced at $20. So it's all relative in how you see it. But the story behind that cigar, the actual like the legit story that I can't tell, validates to the rarity, and not the rarity of the cigar, but the rarity of the opportunity, which is, it's sad that there's this bridge that can't really, be crossed, and there's a certain information that's just going to stay under it. But these are special cigars, and he wanted to brand them as such, and he created the concept of the antique line. He actually did some sampling last month, and he was going to start shipping out a few of the older ones. So there's a 2004 vintage of a cigar that I'm pretty sure I know what it is. He hasn't confirmed, but I'm smoking the last few days. Those ones are not going to be in the pack. We're going to probably launch a limited sampler on Cigar Yard, but those are just ridiculous. And the antique line is basically a series of cigars that he's found with the factory that he's been one of the factories that he's been working with for other releases. They're just outstandingly good, outstandingly aged, and he wanted to brand him as such. He's like, I'm done with bundles. We're going to do boxes now, and this is going to be priced as they should be, which is in a range of like $14 to $18 per stick, which is really up there. He came up with the antique line, and I told him, hey, let's do a different label for each, a different color for each, and keep it within the realm. He agreed. He, ordered up the different colors. So we agreed on doing 7 lines and keeping 2 for a future project that he will use, because there's a lot more cigars of that. So we're including, it's ridiculous because those 2 are in the factory direct. And I think the factory direct is actually more premium. And by premium, I mean, I think these may even be better cigars than the actual placements for the pack. It's ridiculous. And we can't change the price. So it's like, shoot, man. I mean, I'm not even making money on the factory directs for this month. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, but you know what's so cool about it, and we've talked about this before, and Chris and I have said this. It's like I'm so intrigued, and this is like, and this is not like take sponsorship and all that shit aside. Like when a new factory direct comes out, I smoke that first. Like every time. Like open the pack, is like there's cigars that I'm accustomed to, and I was like, yeah, I'm
always more excited about factory direct.
Dude, me too. Like 100%. I open those up, I'm like, yep, going straight to the factory direct, because I love the experimental idea of what they are. That I get to try something new, different, and a lot of it I know comes from, it comes from like these dialogues, and you're opening up this thing, and it's a very like heavy collaborative thing between you and whoever's producing the cigars. And I know what goes into it. And for the fact that I know what goes into it and then what's being produced, and this is what I really want people to understand this in terms of this program. The thing for me that I love about it is you aren't typically ever getting, what is it, a $4.25 cigar. You're getting a $10 fucking plus cigar in most instances that smokes so goddamn good, that's so freaking delicious. Like you have I feel like people don't have an idea. I think there's like a thing about it where it's just like, oh, this is just like this other cigar that is being put into place, and it's more from a value perspective. It's not that. Like it is very, very fucking good premium tobacco, and you just happen to be getting a stellar fucking deal on them. Like it is, to me, it's like, just buy all the factory directs. You know what I mean? Just like buy all. Yeah,
and it's so cool because I think, people that have engaged, on the concept understand what that leads to, and that leads to to what it's meant to be, and we want to get there. It hasn't been fulfilled, is an actual platform for people to be like, this is really good, and I'm not paying attention to the branding. So when can the branding be enabled so I can buy more of it? Because I've already tried it in a very competitive, like it's my cigar pack concept on steroids. Because if you want to eliminate the bias, even though you're giving a great deal on the My Cigar Pack value, because you're paying $7 a stick, essentially shipped, you can't do it on factory direct because it's unbanded stuff, right? So if you're a band smoker, which a lot of people, I mean, I enjoy keeping the band and seeing what I'm smoking constantly, as opposed to like, say, my dad. First thing he'll do is rip off the band. I'm like, dude, stop doing that. You know what I'm saying? It's like you're ripping off the tag of something that's giving it value. Like if branding weren't relevant, everybody would wear black and white t-shirts, or just colored t-shirts with no labels, no designs or whatever. So the point is, it's so cool that brands like manufacturers, people that get involved with factory direct, see the potential with it, because it's not just let's provide a value cigar out there. I mean, this cigar for this month's factory direct, when branded, it's going to be a $19 to $20 cigar.
Right, which is fucking insane.
You are smoking, and I'm not saying that maybe it's going to fulfill what a $19 to $20 because of what I just said. I mean, Juarez to me is a $12. I would gladly pay $12 to $13.
Same.
Every single time I go into a lounge for a Juarez, and it's priced at $6. And then there's other cigars that are 18 or 20 that I don't think are worth $9. Right. You know. So that's part of the process of actually trying them and seeing beforehand. Like when we released the Tiger's a $10 cigar, right? So you paid $4.25 if you were subscribed to the Tiger when Tiger was released in March. How good is a Tiger? I mean, I haven't had one single negative feedback, and I'm not praising the Tiger. I'm saying this is a legitimately good blend. This is a good product. You may not like it. That's great. But so far, the feedback is so great. And the feedback has been surrounding, dude, I bought 2 packs for the Tiger. I got one in my subscription, and then I bought one off on Cigar Yard. And I'm still aging them, and they still get better with time. I'm gladly paying $10 for each now that they've been branded. Yeah. So what I've bought into that gimmicky Tiger BS that you did when you branded those Tiger, I don't know. Maybe I don't trust you enough. I don't know you enough. If you're a member, you've been around for some time, it's more likely that you trust, because there's a component of the exposure that we constantly work with the manufacturers. There's a validation angle behind it that gives us kind of the right to say, hey, this is this, and people believe it, which is great, because that's what branding is, and that's what the reputation is all about. But when you create this platform and you see that is slowly being fulfilled as to what it's supposed to be, it's really rewarding. And I think Factory Direct is not even close to what it should be. And we're gonna transform that into something else soon, like way bigger. We have to. That's awesome. Because the concept is amazing, and there's just so much that manufacturers can do and benefit from it. Like, I'm just gonna go ahead and say it. Next month, we're releasing a prototype blend, actually 2 blends that we've been working on with Matt for a while. So that's going to be just absurd. And he's like, I can't put these into a brand yet because just not ready, and we can't do it yet. I think we're going to do it together. But this is an opportunity for people to actually try this, see this before it becomes what it is, and actually judge it based on what people are paying versus, here's Matt with another X cigar released nationally in an ordinary fashion.
And that's what I guess a lot of people maybe have not made that connection, but that's it. Like I've said, this gives an opportunity for brands to experiment with you, right? And there is the validation process behind it. It's like, hey, there's some uniqueness behind this thing, and we're trying to conceptualize maybe this big next effort that we're trying to make as a brand or as a manufacturer. And Alex, let's explore with you and try something that we can get some feedback on and create some exposure around. And it's like, dude, I mean, the program to me is so fun because of the exploratory factor. Like I get to try something else that I can't just go to the store or go to a B&M and pull off the shelf. I get to try this new thing that also, and this is one thing I love, that not many other people have had a chance to try yet. Like I get to try this thing that just isn't widely available. And I know the idea is like, let's get it more widely available, but I like the uniqueness factor of that, where it's like, I get to be one of the first people to try this thing. And I think last, and it's for every one of them. Like I haven't had one, but, and going back to the Tiger, first of all, you want to talk about branding, dude. Come on. That fucking branding on that fucking cigar, first of all, top notch. And then you smoke the cigar and you go, what? What is this? Actually, it was funny because that's what I was going to smoke like during this podcast, but I thought it would be too on the nose. So I didn't, but I have one sitting in my leather case and I'm going to smoke afterwards. Dude, I go to that thing and it's funny because I like go to my humidor. I'm like, yeah, I know what I'm smoking tonight. It's like a mood cigar. Like there's some times where I'm just feeling fucking frisky. I'm feeling a little sassy.
Exactly, get the Tiger on.
And I'm like, I'm feeling sassy, and I'm gonna smoke the Tiger. Like that's like the feeling that I get and I love smoking that cigar. So hats off, that's fucking a great cigar. But going back to the Factory Direct program, I think because it has that exploratory factor, which I personally love, and just getting to try something that just isn't widely available to me is so fucking cool. It's so cool. And I always say it like, this isn't like, hey, I'm saying this just because of the relationship we have. It's like, dude, these are fucking great cigars. They're unique. They're fucking fantastic. To me, and you know this, we've talked about this. I understand what you're saying as far as like the branding and you have the label on a cigar. To me, I look at it as like, with the Factory Direct, I don't care what kind of packaging they come in. I don't care if they have a band on them. I don't care. I just want to smoke the cigar. I want the experience. Like I'm ready for the experience. When I smoke it, I pick it up, light it, and I'm like, I'm in it for the experience. And actually, I don't know that I've told you this. When I smoke that cigar, like if I smoke, and Chris, he'll understand when I say it. I don't think I've ever smoked a factory direct cigar with Chris. I only smoke them by myself. And it's literally because I want no other influence. I don't want anyone else around me going, what do you think about this? I just want it to be me. Like I don't even have anyone else around me. I smoke it by myself. I just want to be immersed and I really want to think about it. Like I sit there, it's almost like, some people smoke and enjoy a cigar. I can drink with it. And then, my attention is kind of broadcast elsewhere. I'm listening to something in a book. For me, it's like I'm only concentrating on that cigar to the point where I'll like take notes in my phone. Like, here's what I like, here's what I don't like, here's these subtle changes.
Wow.
Oh, this part is very dynamic. This like
do you break it down in thirds?
I break it down third. I literally my notes go first third, second third, final third every time, and I literally right at the third point I go, what am I smoking? I have a tape measure too. Just if it's a 5-inch cigar, I've got my marks in the front. I actually take not a Sharpie, one of the non-toxic ones, and I just mark the cigar in every third. And once I get to that point, then I start taking different notes. Yeah, that's exactly what I do.
Non-toxic, non-GMO, biodegradable.
Has to be. So what else?
Gluten-free?
In terms and are cigars gluten free? Of course they are.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Just kidding. So what else is minus factory direct? Is there a theme to? There's no takeover this month.
Yeah, well, this is an antique line takeover, so there's 7 lines available.
Okay.
Yeah, there's 7 lines in totality, and members are going to get 5 randomly selected. So
Hell
there's
yeah.
7 in rotation, and then the 2 different blends for the factory direct or antique lines that are not released now and will be released in the future. I don't know if with us, but definitely will be. I'll be sure to make some press on it when it releases. I'm like, see that cigar? That was a factory direct. Yeah, and then next month we got something just, you already know what it is. It's just ridiculous.
So stoked.
Just, I'm so excited about it. And
Dude,
then November's
so
going to be a
amped
cool
up.
month. November's going to be a cool month. We're going to have 6 cigars for people. And then December, we're going to come out with a cigar inside it's going to be a takeover. And one of the cigars in the takeover is going to be a cigar produced with, ourselves and the manufacturer. We've been working on it for quite some time. Very, how do I call it? Very peculiar branding on that cigar. Very, yeah, very interesting. I think it's gonna be a hit, man. I it's one of the things that I really want to push a national release, and I think it's gonna happen.
Fuck yeah, dude.
Super excited.
I love it as always. And obviously, thank you for coming on. So because we had you on this episode, you've got to participate in part 2. And I don't know if I'm going to do that next week or maybe wait a little bit for part 2. I have to decide how I want. It depends on the momentum of this one. So just keep your calendar open. That's all I'm going to say.
Just again, remember not Thursday. I'm busy. Next Friday, I'm game. I have Mateo, who's our guy that makes super cool videos for us. He's flying in Tuesday. We're gonna shoot some stuff Tuesday, and then I have him working with one of the brands that we work with that told me, hey, I love your videos. I want to work with you guys. So I'm taking him over. He's going to work with them Wednesday and Thursday. And then Friday, I drop him off at the airport like at 4:15. So literally I'll clear my calendar. I'll clear my very busy calendar after 4:15 Friday. So we could do Friday if it's available.
Just not Thursday.
Just exactly.
Why not Thursday though?
I've got class.
Oh, okay.
I've got a lecture.
Anatomy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wait, did you?
Yeah.
Hey, by the way, I need to ask you a question. Did you find a new home?
I'm looking for a new home. Yeah.
Like a new, like an ownership property. Like you're gonna own a home in Miami.
I'm looking into it. Yeah.
Did you and the one that you viewed last night, was there a proper inspection done?
I viewed it last week actually.
Oh,
last night.
How was the foundation? Was it up to snuff?
Yeah.
Good foundation. Okay.
Look at that. Did you look at that? Hey, I know that guy.
Oh, squirrel. Hey, what's up, buddy? Sorry, I had to do it. All right. So, Alex, thank you so much, dude. I fucking love talking to you. It's literally one of my favorite things. So thank you. Also, thank you for the insight.
Chris. I love you too, Chris.
Love you too, bud.
I like to me, the perspective that you have, especially because you've been in the industry and because of what you own, like the branding around My Cigar Pack as a whole and everything you're doing. That's a different element of conversation that we otherwise wouldn't get, which I thought was super appropriate in this discussion to have. The next one will be just as fun, if not funner. So thank you so much. I appreciate you obviously connecting us to
Lauren's here.
Yeah, the garage door just closed. I literally told her, I'm like, I'm in the garage, so don't press the garage door button when you come home. And she was like, I guarantee I'm going to press it anyway because I'm going to forget. I'm like, great. Oh, there it's opening again. I will say this. Thanks for getting Robert on. That was really cool. That was dope. I'll make sure I connect with him. But obviously, dude, as always, pleasure talking to you. And for everybody out there, this concludes episode 211. We'll be back at you next week with episode 212. See you, fellas.
Dude, my pleasure.
Bye.
Thank you. Love you guys.
See you guys. Love you too, bud.
Love you too, bud.